in New Jersey, when I walked through the woods to the grammar school I went to, I carried a gun, believe it or not, a 410. I used to shoot at the same grouse every day for months. The grouse knew I was coming. He'd fly out of the tree, but he was always there. I never got him, especially a place like Africa. Or going to Africa and when you leave the place where you flew in on an airplane and get in a vehicle and start out, and all of a sudden there's an elephant or a giraffe, and you got to stand there with a 20 gauge shotgun, 7.5 shot, and there's a big elephant comes out in front of you with his ears going like flapping. Quite an exciting thing. Delta was, this was in the early stages, was doing something about the biggest problem, which was predators destroying nests. And I want to get a lot of people out. What I want is to see people, duck hunters, want to get those answers that you guys have. And I want to I want to get that out. And I feel now a very big part of Delta Waterfowl because I've got to know so many people. And I feel like I'm being able to do something now, trying to help where I can.
Welcome to Delta Waterfowl's The Voice of the Duck Hunter podcast. I'm your host, Joel Brice, and I'm fresh off a trip to Steamboat Springs, Colorado, where I had the pleasure of sitting down with Delta board member Don Valentine, a passionate waterfowler, conservation champion, and longtime supporter of Delta's mission to produce more ducks and secure the future of waterfowl hunting. Don didn't grow up chasing ducks, but once he discovered waterfowling as an adult, it quickly became his passion. That passion led him to hunt the Platte River in Nebraska, where he's played a hands-on role in conserving wetlands and other critical duck habitat. But Don's impact goes far beyond the blind. His generosity helped launch some of Delta's most important programs, including early support in the 1990s that helped kickstart our predator management efforts. Today, his giving continues to boost Delta's duck production on a huge scale. In this episode, you'll hear how Don's love for waterfowling shaped his conservation legacy, why he believes so strongly in Delta's unique role as the Duck Hunters organization, and what he sees on the horizon for ducks, duck habitat, and the future of hunting. So stick around. This is an inspiring story from someone who's not only talked the talk, but walked the walk, and helped make more ducks for all of us along the way. With that introduction, let's get started. Mr. Don Valentine, welcome to the Delta Waterfowl podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
Well, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is such a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. It's my first time here, Steamboat Springs. Do you want to kind of describe where we are, Don?
We're on the east side of the main town, but the ski area is right there, about a half mile away. There's another village over at the base of the ski area, but the main town of Steamboat is down there about a mile. And I'm kind of halfway in between.
I saw out the other side of the house this morning, I saw a hot air balloon rise up out of town.
Yeah, that happens every day.
So that's kind of an attraction, I suppose?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that was neat. I've never been in a hot air balloon. Sometime. Maybe before I leave. No,
Yeah.
No, that's great. So, Don, you were a Delta Waterfowl board member.
Correct.
Right? And then it's been, 4 years?
At least 4, yes.
At least 4?
Yes.
But you've known of Delta for how long?
31 years.
31 years.
31.
Well, we must have done something right
Yes, you sure did.
to keep you around and then have you jump on as a board member. That's
Yes, it was something that got me very, very interested in it.
well, I guess. I don't know if you wanted to give a preview. We're going to jump into your main interest of Delta later on in our discussion, but if you just kind of want to give the listener a preview, what is it about Delta that?
Well, I was at a dog trainer friend just east of Bismarck, North Dakota, and I think we were duck hunting at the time, but I've had my dogs up there training, and the person I was with, Tom Ness, who lives there, he said, I want you to meet somebody, and this was a fellow named Lloyd Jones, who at the time was the head of Delta, and I heard his story or the story given by him, which got me very, very interested in Delta. Got very interested because I saw where there was an organization that could really do some major things to help duck populations.
Well, like I said, 31 years later, you're still interested.
Still am, yes.
And
still working at it.
well, that's really good. Well, I want to jump in, and I'd like the listener to learn more about you as a person. And, I think anybody listening to this podcast is probably a hunter, and more specifically, at least a duck hunter. But I think, like many hunters, I think we hunt different types of game. But let's kind of go back. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And
well, I started out in New Jersey, which doesn't sound like a very good place for hunting, but it surprisingly is. And I grew up in the country, of course, and rabbits and squirrels, but my main interest was woodcock and grouse. I didn't hunt ducks very much, but some. But New Jersey has some wonderful duck hunting, but I never got to do it much. And I went to a college in upstate New York, Paul Smith's College, which was a very interesting place. Studied forestry, and then I transferred to a Utah State University and was able to hunt there, but I did a lot of shooting growing up. And our property had a rifle range on it, which was very unusual for New Jersey. And it gave a chance to meet a lot of people, learned a lot about guns and different kind of guns, and a lot of shooting, and a few trips came from that, different kind of trips for pheasants and stuff. But when I went to Utah, northern Utah is it's the upper end of the Bear River, which is a very major duck flyaway place, and it's the north of Salt Lake City and Salt Lake. And but I couldn't hunt there because it was all clubs and leases, and I hunted pheasants there, but it was hard to get on the place to shoot a duck. I got I got really interested in it. I thought this would be great. How do I get to know these people? I'd still like to be a member of Bear River Club, which is the main one there, but I did get to learn about duck hunting there, and traveled up to Wyoming with some school friends and got to hunt there quite a bit. And then I moved here to Steamboat Springs, got involved in building the ski area. I was one of the people that built the Steamboat ski area, which you see behind us. And I was mostly in the land part of it, and utilities and water company and things like that. But it's not that far to Nebraska where there's some good hunting. Started pheasant hunting there and duck hunting, and several years later, which wasn't that long ago, we bought a big farm there, a group of us did, where we had wonderful duck, goose, and pheasant hunting, which we still use a lot. But the real enjoyment now is taking my grandsons there, and if I shoot one or two ducks is great, but I like to see them get ducks.
It is, having two kids myself, I think the favorite deer that's ever been harvested is the one that my daughter shot, and
Yeah.
my son's first ducks are more exciting than my ducks. Can you go back to, do you remember your first hunt? Like, to what was it? Do you remember what you hunted after? And
Absolutely. When I was 10 in New Jersey, you could hunt. My father bought me a single-shot .410 like everybody else did with a hammer. Incredibly difficult thing to shoot with, but I was able to shoot a grouse and a woodcock on my 10th birthday. And I knew where the grouse was, but the woodcock just happened to be there also. I got one of each. That was a long time ago.
Yeah?
But my mother had to walk with me because until you were 16, you couldn't hunt alone. And I certainly remember my first year on our property. I was 11 then. And in New Jersey, I had to use a shotgun with buckshot, which was not much fun shooting deer with, but that's what we had to use. I remember my first deer and my first woodcock, first grouse, and then got to hunt pheasants quite a bit there.
So what was it? I mean, I think this is kind of a fun question to ask people in that, and what I find is that most people struggle to describe what was your early attraction to hunting? Like, even having hunted, what were some of the things that stood out to you that made you want to keep going? Or is that difficult to describe?
I don't think so, because my father was a hunter, which was great. And he was also a fly fisherman, which got me interested in that. But having a father that hunted and taught you gun safety when you were very, very young, I thought was very important.
Yeah.
Plus, living where there were, actually living in an area where game was in our yard. We see deer in our yard all the time, things like that. So that's what got me interested.
And it just kind of ate you up.
Yeah.
Kind of grabbed a hold. Yeah, I think that's the same thing. I grew up in a hunting family. I think it would have been weird for me not to be a hunter, or at least given it a try. But I think everybody has a hunter in them. It's just, for some, it's not as...
I'm sure my father was as happy as I was the day I shot my first deer.
I bet.
I'm sure he was, yes.
Yeah, so duck hunting wasn't part of some of your earliest hunts, and duck hunting opportunities came to you later.
Right.
Do you remember kind of looking outside in on duck hunting? And
Absolutely. My mother's sister married a minister in Maryland and lived on the Chesapeake Bay, and right out in front of where they lived on the water, there was a big place there called Chrysler's. The Chrysler family had a place there, big house, and had these duck blinds out there. But they were just, looked like little wooden houses. They weren't like the blind we kind of, there was no camouflage or anything, but they would put a whole bunch of decoys out there and shoot canvasbacks. I always wanted to get down there to do that, but I never got invited.
So it was something that you had your eye on?
It sure did.
For
I
a
sure
long
had
time?
it, yes.
And so where did you hunt ducks? How old were you when you hunted ducks the first time?
Oh, I probably shot. We had some wood ducks where I lived. Probably when I was 14, I probably got a couple wood ducks. We had a reservoir in our town that had a lot of cover around it, and I'm sure I got a couple of wood ducks there. I remember I did.
But your true attraction to duck hunting came much later than that?
Well, the big time duck shooting came when I had the opportunity to go from here over to Nebraska, where we hunt there, where our farm is. We're one of the very best places for mallards in the country, western Nebraska on the Platte River. Very, very good duck hunting and goose hunting.
There's kind of this theory called, I think it's I think there's 5 of them, 5 stages of a hunter, where early on in the initial stages, someone's interested in hunting, but they're not very good at it. But then as they advance through the stages of hunting, they become really good at it, and killing a lot of ducks is really important. But then over time, I think an individual's attraction to hunting changes. It can still be as strong, but it's less about getting a limit every time, and it's more about, I don't know, I think maybe smell the roses a little bit more. Have you found yourself kind of go through those stages?
Absolutely, yes. I can remember how it was important to get a limit of pheasants and quail going to Kansas or Nebraska, but it's not now. Now it's important to have my grandsons get what they want, me to get maybe 2 ducks.
Yeah.
With good shots, like 2 good shots.
So sounds like, from some of our conversations earlier, last night and this morning, Don, it sounds like one of your big motivations as a hunter now is you speak really proudly of your grandkids and others. So what is your number one inspiration to go hunting now?
Well, a lot of it had to do with travel. I've hunted all over the world. 3 trips to Africa, mostly for birds, and 30 or 40 to England, Ireland, Scotland, and Spain for birds, which is a high end of bird shooting. Went to Scotland when I was 12. My grandfather's brother was a gamekeeper on a big estate there, and I learned all about how they driven pheasants, driven grouse, and pigeons, and rabbits, and everything else. I enjoyed that. I spent a summer there with him, and that got me interested. I said, someday I'd like to come back here and do this, but...
Well, you told a lot of stories, Don. So it sounds you went through a period of time where it was maybe the journey was,
Yes.
That had to have some...
Especially a place like Africa. Going to Africa and when you leave the place where you flew in on an airplane and get in a vehicle and start out, and all of a sudden there's an elephant or a giraffe, and you got to stand there with a 20 gauge shotgun, 7.5 shot, and there's a big elephant comes out in front of you with his ears going like flapping. Quite an exciting thing.
Huh. So after all of the places that you've gone duck hunting, which is many, do you
Right.
have a favorite duck or a favorite place to go duck hunting?
Well,
If you had to
I
pick one.
still love Nebraska, and but I've had interesting duck hunting trips in England and Iceland and actually Africa, Australia.
You've hunted all those for ducks.
Yes,
Huh.
and quite a bit in Argentina also.
And big game hunting was something that you previously did. You don't big game hunt anymore?
I kind of gave that up after a while, but we're a great elk country here. I hunted elk up until a few years ago. I still have an interest in a big white-tailed buck if I had a chance someplace.
So what is it about if you're comparing, and it's a difficult comparison, but you have, bird hunting versus big game hunting. Are there things that aspects of big game hunting that really stood out to you that you enjoyed that maybe waterfowl hunting didn't offer, or vice versa?
Well, bird shooting is shooting, big game is hunting.
Okay.
Not exactly hunting when you're sitting in a duck blind.
I suppose you kind of give up to I'm going to be in this spot.
Yeah.
And
And you hope your shots are done well. But of course, they are also big game hunting. But when you're working through the side of a mountain and stalking or sneaking up on something, that's different.
yeah, that is a lot different in I guess there's different styles of big game hunting, but if
Yeah.
you're sitting in a tree stand, that might be a lot similar to sitting in a duck blind.
Yeah, I never did that, but that's how everybody hunts deer in the east now. In a
Right.
tree stand. I never did it.
So for you, it was you were
Being on the
pursuing
ground.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that actually. I like being on ground level, and when you have an encounter, it's a little more intimate,
Yes,
I suppose.
exactly.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned the Platte River and the club that you had down there. How did you even? Well, I guess someone like you that's traveled all over the place and had lots of connections and business connections and friends, maybe that's how it came. But what were your early impressions of the Platte River down there in Nebraska?
Well, it was a friend I had from Denver who was a very well-known person. His name is Punch Bone, and he's famous for his history of shooting. And he told me about a property in Nebraska that this old farmer wanted to lease out. So I put a couple of those together and we leased it. And we got to know a local banker who I became part of that bank, but also with him we ended up not only leasing all that place, but buying another couple thousand acres next to it. And we have a couple miles of the Platte River. And as I said earlier, it's one of the top places for ducks, especially mallards in the country. And I got real interested in that.
I think being in the duck business as long as I have, I never really thought about Nebraska as a great duck hunting location, because I think my early introduction to Nebraska in a prior life, I spent time researching prairie chickens, and that took me all over the Great Plains, but it took me to the sandhills of Nebraska, and that's not exactly duck country.
No, it's not.
And then I think the other part too is the Missouri River flows right through where I live, Bismarck, Mandan, and it's not great duck hunting until the prairies freeze. Then there'll be some mallards and a lot of geese. So I guess I don't really think about rivers as great duck hunting locations, but
The
I know
Platte
they
River
are.
is a very good river because it's got a lot of associated wetlands with it. Because of all the irrigation, a lot of cattail patches around, and ditches, and return flow from irrigation, which is water that comes into the ground and comes back out at 54 degrees. So these little places do not freeze. So it's places for a lot of ducks to gather in the midst of a cornfield, because that Nebraska is all corn, perfect for the migrating ducks. Everything they need is right there.
Wow. What types of hunting? I know you said there's geese there, there's ducks there. What's the And I guess maybe it's changed. So when you first started hunting that area, what types of hunts did you do
Well,
mostly?
we didn't have, it was mostly pheasants because we didn't, like I said, there was no access to the river.
Okay.
Because it was all leased by individuals and clubs. And you couldn't even ask a farmer to hunt there because he said, well, you can hunt pheasants over there, but the river is leased to so-and-so, and I promised it to them. So I never really got a chance. Yet I could see it. You could see the sky just filled with 20,000 mallards in a flight, and nothing you could do about it.
Yeah. But so that was some of the early stuff there. But then
Yeah.
when you secured access with some partners to that location,
Yes.
what types of hunts would you guys do? Was it water hunts, field hunts,
But we
jump
did.
shooting?
We had blinds, but they weren't very fancy because you didn't need a blind. The ducks were so many that just pour in there. Sometimes we just hide behind a tree, shoot a limit of ducks in 20 minutes in the morning, every morning,
Wow.
if we wanted to. And tremendous amount of Canadian geese there. And so we had pit blinds for the goose hunters. I'm not much of a goose hunter. It was too much trouble to pick them, but a lot of our other members really liked the goose hunting. It's not a real fancy club. The only thing we pay is we have a mortgage on a couple of thousand acres. But one of our partners is the head of the big bank there, so our mortgage is pretty easy to take care of. But we pay that every year, but then a little bit for the hunting, which is work on the blinds or
Sure.
repairs on the farmhouse that we stay in and things like that.
Okay.
So it's not a fancy big club. It's more a group. It is a club, but we also own the farm, so it's a little bit different.
So it sounds like it's a lot about the people.
Yes, they're
in
all
that.
good friends. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I we've talked about this. You've hunted big game more in the past than present, and I hunt as many different types of things as I can. But that's the one thing that I love about waterfowl hunting. Yes, I like the action. I like that you can have success one day and go back out the next, where, big game hunting, you might have a number of days of hunting, then you harvest, and then you're done.
Yeah.
But that is the nice thing about duck hunting, is that every day kind of starts back over again. It reminds me of that movie Groundhog Day, where you just wake up and you keep going again.
Yeah.
And then it's the social part and the camaraderie is such a big part. Is that what do you value that about the
Oh,
duck hunting?
absolutely. I remember in our before we owned this farm, but when we had the old farm, we leased a house as well. I remember how there'd be 7 guys staying there and 7 Labradors sleeping around someplace.
Mm.
It was really kind of a neat thing. And then cooking was fun. Everybody was cooking stuff.
And so you have family that hunts there as well?
I have 2 son-in-laws and 3 grandsons that hunt there.
You keep mentioning one Jack. He's one of your grandsons?
Yes.
Sounds like he's bitten by hunting.
Well, he is more than any of them, and he lives right here in Steamboat, and he's with me a lot at different places. I can't take him all the time because he also is a rancher.
Yeah.
In summertime, I'd like to take him fishing more, but he's in the hay business, so he has to be in his hay field.
So do you see some of yourself in him as far as...
I hope so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, mentorship. You had your father that taught you early on how to hunt, and I bet you some of your earliest duck hunts were other people taking you, teaching you.
Yes.
How long do you feel like this is something we talk a lot about? You take a new person hunting ducks for the first time. It can take a while before they feel like they can go on their own. How can you reflect back on that? When do you feel like how long did it take you to say, I'm a duck hunter, I can handle this?
My father had a friend who was, connected in a lot of ways, and I went with him one time. He said, we're going to go duck shooting. We're going to jump shoot black ducks with 410s, which I thought was okay. We went down in Barnegat Bay, which is famous duck hunting in the East, one of the most famous duck places in the East, and New Jersey, and jump shot black ducks.
Hmm.
But there was no way I could do it again because that was before I was driving myself. So I was probably 14 or something. I did that.
Yeah.
I learned about ducks. I learned how smart black ducks are, how hard it is to decoy them and stuff.
Yeah, that is it's difficult. We're a little bit of a tangent here, Don, but the kids, taking a kid hunting, you have to take them. Somebody has to be able to take them.
Yeah.
Like you were interested in hunting at a very young age, and not everybody can walk right out there.
But this fellow did not have any sons. He had a daughter or two, but he didn't have a son to take. So he took me, which was very nice.
and then you went several times, but do you remember going on your own for the first time?
Not really.
Just all blends together, or maybe you were with other people.
I think I went with another guy once, but we just kind of fumbled around. We didn't know how to do it, because we were, the Barnegat Bay is all clubs, I think. We just kind of wandered around, probably on somebody else's property.
There weren't the phone apps at that time for land ownership and where you are.
No, there wasn't.
One of the things that I like to talk about, Don, is I like to describe hunting culture for different parts of the world. So you go down into that Arkansas, southeast U.S. You have I think of flooded timber. I think of when you go to the northeast, I think of a lot of history, sea duck hunting. Think of the Dakotas. I think of people doing a lot of scouting and setting up in fields or ponds. How would you describe in Nebraska, in that Platte River area? How would you describe the culture of duck hunting in that part of the world?
It's very local too. I had a friend that I met here in Steamboat who grew up on a farm in Nebraska. We went there pheasant hunting. And they own the river, so we did get to shoot there some. We got a couple geese once in a while and a few ducks. There's also a lot of quail there. So, but we weren't serious duck hunters because we didn't have a blind and a bunch of decoys. Didn't do that until we got to having our own property there.
We always talk about, I think we all do this as hunters, we're very proud about conservation. I think someone who doesn't hunt, they look at hunters and they say, how can you, if you love a duck so much, how can you...
Why do you kill them?
Yeah, why do you kill it? And I think that's a really difficult thing to explain. I think it's easier to show that we care. And, I've never been to your club, but I understand that you guys have done quite a lot of conservation work over time.
We have.
Can you describe, some of the positive changes that you guys brought to that part of the world?
We've built two lakes by dam. They're not really dams; they're berms because they're very shallow lakes, and one of them is within quarter of a mile of a very well-known refuge. And we're very close to an awful lot of ducks and geese. And we were able to build some blinds there, but we flooded quite a bit. There was another area on the other side of the farm where was a very wetland, and most of this water is return water from all the irrigation because it's all irrigated cornfields, and would create this big long area of wetlands. So we put a berm across that, which made a lot of open water and attracted a lot of ducks. And we added, we didn't need, because the ducks had so many other places to go there, but this helped because we get them to come on our own property. Obviously we couldn't shoot on the refuge, but we were close enough to it, so we try to attract some over for our property.
Yeah, you bet. Well, and then I would imagine the habitats that you developed, yeah, they're there for you and accessible for the ducks during duck season, but they're there the rest of the year too, I would imagine.
Well, not many, but there's a few nesting, but not many.
Right.
Obviously they're nesting in North Dakota or Manitoba.
Right.
But then they show up there in October, November.
Well, that's an important staging area.
Yeah, it is very huge.
A lot of sandhill cranes too, right, in that part?
Well, just east of it, it's famous for sandhill cranes.
Okay.
See thousands of them.
Have you hunted those?
No, I never have.
I haven't either.
But they tell me they're awful good eating.
Yeah, I've heard them referred to as ribeye of the sky.
Yeah, flying ribeye or flying tenderloin or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, why don't we switch, Don? We gave the listener an introduction right in the beginning there, but I know this is the part of Delta that I can see the excitement come out in you is predator management. So
It is.
But you go back to when you first heard about Delta. What is it that drew you in?
Well, I, like everybody, thought that ducks were, bred and raised in a wetland, a cattail patch alongside of some pond. But I learned from this Lloyd Jones when I met him how the majority of the ducks, a huge percentage of the ducks that are in the West, especially, and actually for all the flyways, are grown in a open prairie in North Dakota or Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or eastern Alberta. And he told me how things had changed there, mainly 200 years ago, when there were more ducks. They did not have any predators that affected the ducks. A few crows, hawks and owls got a few young ones. Crows got a few nests, but not that much.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get to the water, a mink would get a few, maybe a northern pike would get a duckling.
Sure.
But he explained to me what happened. He said that when Manitoba, North Dakota, mostly Manitoba and Saskatchewan, were settled for the grain farming that is there now, there was no habitat for skunks and no raccoons. They weren't there. There was no habitat. Plus, there was wolves and grizzly bears that didn't like anything little around there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then these people built buildings, little outbuildings, rock piles, planted trees, culverts. All these things created habitat for raccoons and skunks, and they became a tremendous number of them. And suddenly they found that they had a good life there because they had a place now to live, plus something to eat, which was duck eggs, and how up to 90% of the nesting mallards or teal or pintails, the nests were destroyed by a skunk, and how quite a few of them are killed by foxes. The hens are killed by foxes. Delta was, this was in the early stages, was doing something about the biggest problem, which was predators destroying nests. And that was trying to control skunks and raccoons and the building of the thing called a hen house, which would enable a mallard duck to go in there and have her eggs protected from a skunk, and maybe have those ducklings fall out of that nest and into a lake and didn't have to endure all the travel across a prairie. But money for Delta Waterfowl really could do something. With Delta, they told you what they were going to do to help the ducks, and that got me really interested. So I did what I could with my own modest generosity that I had, but it wasn't much then, but I've done better since. But I wanted to help find people that could donate, because so here's something good that can happen. And I've been at it for a long time now.
Yeah. Well, predator management, to me, it's very logical. I mean, you did a really good job telling that timeline of how things have changed. And so when I hear people say, well, just let nature take its course. Well, humans have really altered the landscape.
Too much, yeah.
And altered, so it's not natural for the predator population to be, if you compare it to historical predator numbers, it's not natural, at least. So we've altered it. So predator management is not, I always tell people, it's not an eradication program. It's not get rid of every one of them, because they do play a role, but it's about restoring that balance.
Getting the balance back, yes.
Yeah, and allowing ducks to nest in an environment, in a situation that they evolved with, at predation rates that are normal, that allow a population to at the very least maintain its local numbers and hopefully expand.
They're trying that right here now, right there, those hills right there. this is where the wolves have been put out.
Oh,
I haven't seen one yet, but my grandson Jack has seen one. My daughter has seen one, and somebody told me right on that ski area they saw some tracks this winter. They've been there.
well, you'll probably hear them before you see one,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah.
So the time what you were introducing there, where you became familiar with Delta through Lloyd Jones and predator management, that was some of the really early research,
Very early.
very early. So what convinced you that studying was a worthwhile investment?
Well, as to say to John Devaney, who's a person I met very early on, I said, John, you keep doing all this study. You know what's happening. Let's get after the predators. Let's get after building hen houses. And you've done the study. You know what's wrong. Let's go get to work on it and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably 20 years ago that John Devaney heard that from me.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that, we proved a long time ago that it works, but we spent a lot of time, one thing that marvels me is, we proved out predator management primarily in North Dakota. We have the oldest research, the longest research. As the landscape changes, we study some of the, we study some of how the changes, loss of CRP, change in the predator community. The red fox disappeared in big numbers quite a long time ago. So that changed some of the predator-prey dynamics, where other species of predators were the ones doing the majority of the damage. So we spent a lot of time tweaking and trying to maximize our return on investment. And you put that money out there, what's the best way to make more ducks? But it is something that we've studied for a long time. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the tool works, but you have to apply it a little bit differently, a little different emphasis, sometimes different block sizes. And you probably love the Million Duck campaign then.
Absolutely.
Because that's what you're saying is, hey, you've studied it for so long.
Yes.
Let's get to work. And, the Million Duck campaign, for the new listener, it's the Million Duck campaign itself is an effort to endow, so perpetually pay for the production of 1 million ducks per year forever. I know I'm being a little redundant here with perpetual and forever, but it's a mix of predator management and hen houses. You must love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you? So, I think I might be putting words in your mouth, but I don't think so. So, you look back and you said 20 years ago, you're like, hey, it's time to get to work. And so, are you happy with the changes that have taken place at Delta over time?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And this is, I started with Delta in 2001, and I was explaining to you last night that when I moved and I got the job, and I remember taking my box of things into the Bismarck office, which was a different building and a lot smaller. There was Lloyd Jones, John Devaney, and 2 or 3 administrative staff. And we have changed a ton over time. And there were a handful of employees in Canada as well. But we've changed a ton, where I think we're over 100 employees scattered across the U.S. and Canada. And I think growth is something that can be challenging for probably any of your businesses as you became more successful, trying to hang on to some of those things you loved about your small business. But how you've seen Delta, 31 years, you've seen a ton of change. How do you feel like Delta's handled that?
I've seen it all, I think.
So how do you feel Delta has handled that?
I think I couldn't have done better. I've gotten to know some people very well. John Devaney and John Davis become very good friends. And I learned a lot from them. I've traveled a lot of places with John Davis and seen a lot. And so I can't imagine, how it could have been done better with those 2 guys particularly.
Yeah. Now
I know you, and so I can learn, I can ask questions of people that know the answers. And I enjoy that because you guys have the answers that I want. And I want to get a lot of people out. What I want is to see people, duck hunters, want to get those answers that you guys have. And I want to I want to get that out.
So do you have any ideas for me to take back?
Yes.
How to get
they've heard my ideas, but One of them is I'd like to see some kind of a information packet or a short educational thing that I could give actually to duck guides.
Oh,
I've
sure.
talked to several of them in Nebraska that I've gone through with this, and but the big duck hunting areas where they charge people to hunt, whether it's Nebraska or Stuttgart, Arkansas, or the Sacramento Valley in California, any of the big duck areas where there are, hunting organizations. Most of them are in Arkansas. If somebody comes in and has a good day of shooting a bunch of ducks, say that was great. I'd like to be able to have that guide say, let me tell you why there's so many ducks here now. Why you saw 10,000 mallard drakes today. It's because of an organization like Delta Waterfowl, and here's what they do. And here's what you can do to help.
Well, you're right. I don't know. There's probably not a one-size-fits-all statement here, but probably what you're thinking here is you have a guide, and they have hunters that come in from all over the place. Some of these locations might have hundreds of hunters coming through in a fall.
They do.
So what a great opportunity to get that Delta information and Delta message. I'll bring that one back with me.
And you also see the airport where you see private jets there. So there are guys that can afford a private jet could also give a nice donation to Delta every year.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So predator management, you said that's your favorite part of Delta. What else stands out? The work that we do. What do you like about it?
Well, you know what's going on. You know what ducks do. You know what their flight patterns are and the other things that the ducks have to deal with. And your suggestions as John Devaney gets involved with the politics
Yeah.
of conservation is, I think, very important. And I think there's several people working on that.
There is. Yeah, and I mentioned to you before, I think I don't want to sell anybody short, but I think our policy team, I remember when nobody at Delta did policy and the phone started ringing off the hook, and I've seen an increase in the frequency of calls of hunters calling in and saying that there's something going on in their area, somebody trying to close something, or just something, unhappy with regulations, or maybe a public hunting area was an area that you could always hunt was closed, or maybe there was a bay where people historically hunted, and then, the encroachment of houses, you could still legally hunt it, but there'd be people not wanting to hear shotgun blasts, moving into that location. So I remember John taking on, John had a jack of all trades, a big period of his job where he was jack of all trades, but I watched him do a fantastic job handling those calls, and it became something that he championed, and it became more and more a part of his job because there were more calls, and it was really important. And then he's been able to expand his team, and I think there's 5 or 6 individuals, one in Canada, one in California, Arkansas, Virginia, I believe, Bismarck. And I had mentioned that I recorded a podcast last week with John Devaney and Cyrus Baird, and we were talking about how a lot of duck hunters across the country rely on public lands to hunt, and that in the north there's not a lot of management that takes place of public lands. If there is, it's grazing or burning or spraying weeds, things like that. But we're reliant on wet cycles and dry cycles. So a lot of northern management is for breeding ducks, but in the south, that public land duck hunter, there's a lot of manipulation that takes place on those public lands, and they've seen decreases in numbers of staff, budgets, and maybe there's a water control structure or a pump that is relied upon to create habitat for ducks and therefore hunters, and now they don't have a budget for it. So that's been a big thing. Have you seen big changes in duck hunting over the course of your lifetime duck hunting?
Not really, because in Nebraska nothing's changed.
I suppose it's kind of that same.
It's the same and very good. Always has been.
Yeah.
I want to bring up something that I didn't talk about earlier.
Okay.
My first real interest in ducks. I had a real interest in woodcock and ruffed grouse, and I found out about a place in Canada called Tapasintac Bay. There's a club there called Tapasintac Club, and a fellow that I knew from the Wild Turkey Federation, because in my property in South Dakota, had a lot of turkey hunters come there for get the Merriman turkey. And anyhow, this guy owned this club there. Not a club, it was a camp. And there was ducks, geese, woodcock, grouse, and Atlantic salmon. But the duck hunting was in a sink box, which is illegal in a lot of places. This is a wooden coffin you lay on your back in. It's got two little wings on it, so the waves don't come into you and soak you. They just, the little wings go up and down with the waves and keep the water out. And you're laying on your back and with a bunch of hand-carved decoys for Canada geese and black ducks, which is pretty damn neat.
Wow.
That was wonderful shooting. It was hard to shoot, though, to lay on your back and shoot up.
Especially with the waves.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many marvelous and different ways to hunt ducks, and no two people will seem to attack it the same way. If you're okay with that, I'd like to kind of shine the spotlight back on you a little bit. There's one of the things that I'd like to learn a little bit more about is I've heard you've been called a visionary developer, and that gives you a little chuckle, but I think development, I think if you're a conservationist, at heart, and someone thinks of development as kind of taking away from natural assets, but one of the things that I've learned from you is, we talked about just here at Steamboat, all the different natural areas that you've donated, for the public to take advantage of parks.
Parks and open space, a lot of it.
But how did you did a lot of development, but how did you balance growth with land stewardship throughout your career? Did you have a philosophy, or did...
Well, what I did was, help build that ski area, which is a big part of it. I was a big part of it. That had to be, you had to be a visionary to do that. And we also wanted to make it a nice place for people to live, because there's a lot of houses going to be built. So I built a lot of open space, a lot of parks. In fact, I could take you to one today I'd like to show you.
Okay.
And you can see that one right across the road there. But I'll show you one in the middle of the ski area with a lot of houses, condominiums, houses, hotels, everything. A nice open space I put right in the middle of it. And that is because I wanted to, and I've gotten remarks lately because of what they call the affordable housing, which is an impossible thing to fix. You cannot fix it nowadays. It's impossible for a person now to, most places, to go out and build a little house. But they're trying on some of this land I gave, they're trying to build some employee housing on it. Put, instead of lots I build are 1 acre lots. They're beautiful lots. I'll show this to you. And then these lots now the size of a trailer park lot, which is 5,500 square feet in the middle of this park. And I mean, it just killing me to see that. I've spoken to the city council and planning commissions about it several times, and how many times these people that live there thank me for what I did. I really enjoy that.
Do you credit, well, I'll back up a little bit. So you've traveled the world hunting, fishing, and it's probably safe to say that every one of those destinations was a beautiful natural area.
Oh, yes.
Right? And do you feel like your lifetime as a hunter, valuing those natural habitats, do you feel like that, do you feel like either consciously or subconsciously that you brought that into your business? Thinking about natural areas and thinking about...
I think it probably did, yes.
Yeah.
Especially in England, which is such a well-developed place. I learned a lot about it there because I had friends. I stayed at their houses, which are, can't call them a house, with 38 bedrooms. It's a little more than a house like we have. But how they, what their conservation ideas about game and protecting some open space and what little wetlands they could preserve for ducks was done.
That's I personally think that it's impossible for someone like yourself to separate, hunting and conservation from your work. You know, I think
I never did.
yeah, I think they're yeah, yeah. I like the story you were telling me that your office was at the base of the ski hill,
Right.
and so it would give you the opportunity. You know, for me at work, if I take a quick break, I'm going to walk down the sidewalk maybe. But for you, you would jump on the.
Put my skis are right there and ski clothes, and I just change my clothes, grab my skis, walk out the door. Had a lifetime pass on the lifts. So 200 yards I'd be on the lift.
And then maybe you'd have a 1 o'clock meeting, so you just need to be
Yeah,
back down the hill for that.
exactly.
That's great. Switching to your role as a board member, that's from what I've seen, that's a big step. You, for one thing, to be a supporter of Delta, you completely choose when, how much, how often you're involved with Delta. But when you jump on and be a board member, that's one of the things that I've really admired about our boards, or all of our board members, is it's a high level of engagement. That was a kind of a next level effort for you. What?
When I met John Devney, he came down to the Black Hills of South Dakota, and we fished together in a little trout stream there. And I asked him about being on the board, and he said, "Well, you get on by giving and getting."
Yeah.
So I'll do what I can on giving, and I'll do my best for getting. And but I want to do something. I want to be part of it somehow. I'm also on the board of the Atlantic Salmon Federation, which is a big international thing, Canadian and U.S. And but living in Colorado, there's not much I can do every day. What we do is things like trying to restore some rivers in Maine that are filled with dams that have been there since 1775 or something like that.
Wow.
That are impeding the spawning ability for the Atlantic salmon. Try to get those dams out, which is a tough thing because they belong to power companies and stuff. But we've been successful. But other things is dealing in Greenland, because all Atlantic salmon from all those eastern rivers in Canada go to Greenland for the winter. Can you imagine that, going to Greenland for the winter?
No.
And that's where they go. Then they come back in June, July. Then they spend the winter in the rivers, and then some of them spend the rivers, but a lot of them, they get back out. They go to Greenland. But there's a high seas netting in Greenland. That's the only place you can still net salmon in the world. And, pretty much England has stopped, and Spain has stopped, and places like that have all stopped. But they still do it in Greenland. So a big amount of money that we give as an agreement with the fishing association there, we give them a lot of money. I forget how much it is, but I say to a friend of mine that I've hunted all over with, hunted and fished all over. He lives in South Carolina now. He lived here for a long time. But I say, John, please give us $50,000 a year, and think about that 30-pound hen salmon you could catch on your fly rod being caught in Greenland and used for dog food, because money can actually bring more fish back to the rivers. And but my problem is I'm a long way from there. Not much I can do, from here.
Right.
I can talk to people, but I'm not there. I like Maine. I'd like to live there. If Steamboat gets as crowded as it's getting, I'll go to Maine for the summer.
Yeah.
I'll leave the best weather and go to the worst weather.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you've described about this part of Colorado or the United States.
Every day is like today. Every day, winter and summer.
And you said the only rain you get is during a storm?
During a
thunderstorm?
It's the only time we get rain, yes.
Well, it's beautiful. Yeah, and we were leaving the door open, and I asked you if you had mosquitoes here, and you said not really.
The biggest problem is a bear coming in and a mosquito. There are some, but...
Yeah, and you have a resident moose, you said, that
there's several of them, yeah.
Likes to occupy. Well, that's great. So maybe one of the things that you like about being on a board is impact, the ability to be more engaged.
Yes, I'd like to be able to do something.
Yeah, well, that's great. It's been a great opportunity for me to get to meet you and spend some time. I think kind of moving towards the end of our conversation, again, I know how you've spoken so proudly about your grandkids and kids, and what are some of the, well, I guess you've already left a legacy, whether you think about it or not, but what do you hope your, your next generations, your grandkids, what do you hope that they carry on?
I hope they can still hunt. I hope my grandsons, one of them now has his own kids, and I hope the other one just got married this past summer, and I hope they have kids that can hunt. And I just be able to take a great grandson hunting. That would be a real thrill for me.
Maybe this year?
Well, they're not quite old enough for that.
No, no.
They're only little babies.
Yeah, I took both of my kids. I took them both when they were 3 for the first time, and of course they don't remember that, but that was part of my strategy.
All of our grandkids have all been in Nebraska when they were 3 years old. I remember one of my son-in-laws, they had this little fake double-barrel shotgun, and he'd go bang like that. And I remember my son-in-law saying to him, Cole or Jack, I forget what it was, Willie, you just got your first duck, because he shot a duck, and the duck fell.
I did
and
the same
he was
thing.
probably 3 years old.
Yeah.
But Nebraska is an interesting state because you can get a license as soon as you can pass hunter safety. And Cole, who now lives in Nebraska as a horse trainer, he was 9, and he got his hunting license, and he was shooting ducks and geese and pheasants regularly.
That is interesting too. I grew up in Wisconsin, and we could not hunt until we were 12, and then I believe we had to be with someone until we were 14. And at 14, you could go on your own, and I could because I grew up right in the middle of a hunting woods, and so I did have the opportunity. And my dad, I was so obsessed with hunting, so I think by the time I was 14, I'd already proven, to be capable and to be independent. So he'd let me go out, out in the woods with a gun. 22.
I had the same experience because in New Jersey, because we had a lot of property, a lot of woods and fields, and my father gave me a 410 when I was 7, but a double-barrel shotgun when I was 11 that I killed a deer with. But you had to get a license at 10, but you had to be 16 to go by yourself. But I know I was out there in those woods when I was 12, 13, 14 a lot. And because he knew I was safe with a gun, which he made sure I was. And so I was out there deer hunting and rabbit hunting and squirrel hunting years before I was allowed to, but we're on our own property.
Right. I don't think that, I'm sure there's kids out there that have the same opportunities that we had, but it feels like society has changed and parents have changed. Do you feel like there's kids out there doing that same thing that you did?
Well, my grandsons would go to high school after duck hunting on the river here with their shotguns in their trucks, in a rack in the back. And nowadays, you bring a gun to school. Even though in New Jersey, when I walked through the woods to the grammar school I went to, I carried a gun. Believe it or not, a 410. I used to shoot at the same grouse every day for months. The grouse knew I was coming. He'd fly out of the tree, but he was always there. I never got him. But I got a rabbit or two once in a while. And I hang my hunting coat in the guy that took care of the furnace and stuff. But can you imagine in New Jersey now carrying a gun to school? But this was only, the Jack is now 23, but when he was 17, they would be in the river down here hunting ducks before school. And they'd go to school with the gun in the truck.
And probably not anymore.
Well, yes, because this was after all these bad things happened.
Right.
With school shootings and stuff, but yet the principals and the police knew who they were, and they kind of approved it.
Okay.
Let them get by.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's super common anymore, where people are allowed to. The school situation. Yeah. I do remember in college having a shotgun on campus. I can't remember how I navigated that. Maybe I just broke it in half and took it inside. I'm not sure. Or maybe I left it in my truck. I don't remember. But, we hunted a lot in college and, even the dorm years living.
I did too, but somehow I lived in a dorm with a shotgun and a rifle in upstate New York.
Huh. Well, kind of in parting, reflecting on your upbringing and then kind of how you see the modern hunting landscape, what advice would you give someone new to duck hunting about, I think, maybe some of the joys or the challenges ahead, and how do they?
Well, to see the sunrise or just before sunrise, and you see that beautiful color out there across the water, and you see all these ducks start flying by. To see that, I think it's very important to learn that, how important it is to be out there seeing that.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this. We go hunting, and we hope we harvest something, and for me there was a period of life that I went through where it was really important for me to get a limit, and
Yeah.
I just hard charge, and I don't really know if there was a moment in my life where that became less important, but
Well, in mine, that happened with me, but only in the last few years. I'm in my 80s now, but in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, did a lot of travels to the Kansas and Nebraska, and driving to Kansas a lot because a lot more quail there.
Mhm.
It was important to us to try to get 3 pheasants and 6 quail in a day.
Yeah.
Very important because we only get to go there 1 or 2 times a year.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I do see North Dakota as a destination hunting location for a lot of people, for pheasants, a little bit for sharp-tailed grouse, but certainly ducks and geese. And, I envy some of those guys at times, when I live in this great hunting location, but I have the responsibilities of my job and chasing kids around, and, I'll sneak out for a couple hours, but guys that travel in, they put a lot of time, they put a lot of money, and they want their limits. And I guess that's not really what I'm talking about, but, I think it's really important, for people to, like you said, see the sunrise and focus on the camaraderie while you're doing all that other stuff.
Well, in Kansas, we had a little property there, small farm, and another friend of ours had a bigger farm, and on his place we had prairie chickens, not sage grouse, prairie chickens.
Actual prairie chickens.
Yes, and they'd fly a long distance. I don't know where they came from, or where they were going, but we'd try to get under them somehow so we could get one.
Mm-hmm.
And we got 1 or 2. That would be a wonderful time to get 1 or 2, because we were there for pheasants and quail, but to add a prairie chicken was kind of neat.
That is neat. You were telling me about you'd go and you'd flush a certain pothole or marsh somewhere, and oftentimes you'd get a duck and you'd get a pheasant at the same time.
Yes, that was in Nebraska when we couldn't get down on the river, but on a farm we had permission to hunt pheasants. There was a 8-inch pipe coming up with an artesian well coming out of it. It made a little wetland around it, and it's a lot of brush with the water, and just out there a little bit was all cornfields, and so it was a good place to go for pheasants because it was everything the pheasant needed: cover, water, and feed.
Mm-hmm.
But then because of the water, ducks would come in, even though there's thousands of them down on the river, but a few would always come there. So I would go up to that spot and flush a pheasant and shoot at the pheasant, hopefully get it. I know I got doubles on pheasants and ducks before, because that would scare the ducks that were there, and a pair of mallards would take off. I'd shoot the drake, get a cockbird and a drake mallard like that, bang, bang. Happened several times.
It's a nice mixed bag.
Yeah.
Absolutely nice mixed bag. Well, Don, is there anything that we skipped over that you really wanted to talk about?
Other than the fact that I feel now a very big part of Delta Waterfowl, because I've gotten to know so many people, and I feel like I'm being able to do something now, trying to help where I can.
Well, I think that says a lot. I think, you're the typical member or supporter of any organization. There's a lot of trust, right? It's what you read, it's what you see on social media, the website. But for you to have gotten so close and so deeply involved in Delta, and to still be inspired to be engaged and keep going, that means a lot to me.
Well, it means a lot to me too.
You're in the belly of the beast, and you still love it. So then I think maybe one of the last things, what is the phrase, we call ourselves the Duck Hunters Organization. What does that mean to you?
It means you're doing an awful lot for the species in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But raising money for Delta, you can do something, which is my biggest feeling about it. You can do something with the money.
Yeah, whether it's duck production, which which
Yeah.
sounds like it's your favorite, or directing research towards some critical management question, the policy work, the hunter advocacy, the hunter recruitment work.
Well, a good example is hunter advocacy, which is the college program and the Sunday hunting.
Oh yeah.
In New Jersey, we couldn't hunt on Sunday, which for a lot of people, that's the only day they could hunt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for most people, if you could just hunt the weekends,
Yeah.
you add Sunday hunting, you doubled your hunting opportunity.
And what is wrong with hunting on Sunday? maybe a couple hundred years ago, they thought a more religious aspect to it. I don't think so now.
No, I don't think so.
There's no reason not to have Sunday hunting.
Well, perfect. Well, Don, thank you very much for hosting me here. This is and for your time. That time is so valuable for all of us, and I really appreciate that. Thank you for being so involved with Delta, and it inspires me as a staff person to know that there's somebody like you on our board. And
I would like to say I very much enjoy doing this. I can't wait to get the first phone call from somebody that sees it and tells me that they saw it or heard it.
yeah, well, I think people can be, when someone's asked to be on a podcast, I think it can be a little intimidating. You're not really sure, but so I guess, did I make it easy for you?
I didn't know what a podcast was. I heard about it, but I never knew what it really was.
Yeah. Well, when you knew I was coming down,
Absolutely, yeah.
did it make this easy on you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in Oklahoma City in a few weeks.
Yes.
All right. And for anybody listening, that's the 4th Expo.
Yes.
All right. Okay, Don. Thanks a lot. You take care.
Thank you.